So he talks about this particular method used by the historians, and his meeting with Ranjit Guha gave him insights to understand the things. He was, wondering. He had many questions in his mind, and he was trying to find answers, but they weren't satisfying. More reading and a few conversation later, I realized that what allowed Guha to connect texts separated by centuries and thus deliberately flout some fundamental rules of historical writing was his deep acceptance of French structuralism. Okay, so he understood. Initially, he wondered how could Guha connect text of 19th century to the same text which was separated by centuries. Then he realized that his historical writing, Guha's historical writing, was influenced by French structuralism. So we're very much aware of Claude Lévi-Strauss, who was influenced by Ferdinand de Saussure, the theory in linguistics, and that was borrowed in anthropology by Claude Lévi-Strauss. Later in literary criticism too, we have literary structuralism. So Guha's thinking was under the influence of French structuralism. So we know structuralism. It talks about the deep structure, talks about what we call the underlying structure. So we are familiar with the terms la langue and la parole. So he said that the underlying proposition was that certain cultural practices could continue to exist long beyond their historical origins by becoming codified through constant repetition and by thus entering the structural aspect of a culture. So he's referring to Claude Lévi-Strauss' study of culture by using structuralism. He studied many tribal cultures. So he came to the view that the underlying structure, underlying system, which can be understood as a kind of proposition, a statement, that certain cultural practices could continue to exist long beyond their historical origins. Now, whatever language that you speak or we speak is a kind of codified structure. It is what we call the surface structure in Chomsky's term, or parole, the actual manifestation of the underlying structure. He's referring to that. So all the cultural practices are what we call the paroles, but they have the underlying structures as well. And these structures, the paroles, become codified through constant repetition and thus entering. Codified means they get the form. For example, while talking about social linguistics, we refer to the process of standardization. A language is selected, first of all, the selection process is there. Then there is a step of codification. It is codified, means a language is given some form. Some symbols are used, means phonemes and what we call the vowels and consonants are used to codify the language. Structures are used. So this constant repetition, it happens through constant repetition, and by thus entering the structural aspects of culture. So there is an underlying system, and this system works repeatedly. There's a kind of constant repetition, and this is how we come across the surface structure of what we call the parole. And then it is the analyst's job. The analyst's job was a semiotic one. Semiotics is the system which studies science, or it deals with science system. So the analyst's job is to whatever he or she needed to be able to decode, encoding and decoding the process in semantics, you may be knowing. To encode means, for example, at present I am encoding and you are decoding, or in case of this essay, it is encoded by Dipesh Chakraborty and I am trying to decode it. To decode means to interpret, to understand. So the job of the analyst is to decode the structure in order to see how the archaic could be alive and well inside the heart of the modern. Archaic means the ancient, the old system is a kind of residue. Residue is a leftover. So that is there. He's referring to Kosambi's work. So we always have that residue. The memories are there. And that happens through repetition. So the archaic could be alive and well inside the heart of the modern. Whatever is modern, modern is the kind of parole, and archaic is the underlying system, that is the residue, and that residue is always there in the modern as well. So what we understand here is that he is coming up with this lang and parole. The lang is the underlying system. So here equate the archaic with the lang and the modern with the parole. Okay, this is how we can understand. So this could hold even if one, and I do, he says, I also, even if one, and I do. One granted Chatterjee his point about technological change. Even if technological changes have taken place, the archaic is there, it is alive. And I too agree with that. I was very excited by the discovery, he says. And remember that over the following 3 months of my stay in Britain, while I spent the daytime working in archives and libraries, I spent most evenings and weekends giving myself a course on structuralism. Okay, so he spent time in archives. He visited many national libraries, etc., where archival is made. Archive is the place where storage of books or different ancient things is made. Libraries are the places of books, whereas archives are ancient things are stored. Okay, and he spent his evenings and weekends in a course on structuralism. You should understand that. He attended a course because he was not familiar with structuralism. And even he read a good bit of Levi-Strauss, Claude Levi-Strauss, Roland Barthes, and Romano Jacobson. They were the structuralists. So he started reading them to understand. This was really a very interesting discovery. That's what he felt. Because Guha had connected this to that. Initially, Dipesh Chakrabarti had a kind of, surprising thing. He was thinking, how could Guha connect the ideologies in 19th century to that of the ideologies of archaic period or ancient period? And then gradually the revelation came to him. He understood that Guha had become familiar with structuralism, French structuralism, and he started working under the influence of structuralism. He was highly inspired by French structuralism, and he then time Dipesh Chakrabarti to got a kind of revelation. It was a kind of insightful journey for him, and he developed interest in structuralism. So this is how we understand the archaic in the modern. The archaic means the ancient is the part of the modern. Okay, you saw he gives it. He explains it very good examples. He explains it with the example of the lathe machine, which is the modern, and bullock cart is archaic, and then he explains it with the help of the example of public transport vehicles, wherein he talks about the historical figures of saints and then goddess. Saints are human beings; they are the part of the modern, and then goddesses are the part of the archaic. So this is the combination. This is how the things live, continue to live. So some things change and something continue to live. So this is how we understand this section on the archaic in the modern, which is a kind of themes that he has been talking, which is one of the two themes, sub themes that he is referring to here under the title generative mistakes.